What is up, YouTube? C here. Good afternoon. And for today's video, we're going to be talking about the worst career choices in MMA. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean fighters that, made, poor choices, before going into a fight that, would have, affected their career, their legacy, or even, their money. These will be things like not preparing for the fight properly, not waiting for a fight to happen, and it'll actually really just be those two. And so without further ado, let's get on with the video and talk about these four fighters. Now, this first entry will be about Josh Grisby. Now, I'll be doing these chronological order. So for this, like I said, Josh Grisby. Now, most of us, including me, I didn't know who this guy was. I'm a relatively new UFC fan, so I had to do a little bit of research on this guy because he was actually Dustin Poirier's first fight in the UFC. They're actually both their first fights in the UFC. Now, Josh Grisby, he was a force in the WEC, and he had a 14-1 record, with 13 of those wins being finishes in the first round. And he actually had 4 wins in the WEC going into the UFC, going to his fight with Poirier having an 8-1 record, and well, he was fairly unknown at the time. Now, one of Josh's wins in the WEC was actually against Jens Pulver, who was a former UFC champ, and Josh Grisby was in a conversation to fight Jose Aldo, but Aldo was out with an injury, and so he decided to take a fight with Poirier to stay busy. Now, he would actually end up losing by decision, and after the fight, he would go on to lose 3 more fights and get cut from the UFC and end up with a record of 14-4. Now, he would not only never fight in the UFC again, but also retire from MMA and just leave the sport entirely, and well, he hasn't been seen from since. So for our second entry, we'll be talking about Cain Velasquez not going to Mexico City sooner. So we've heard Joe Rogan call fighters a marauder. This guy's a marauder. Well, Cain was, unironically a marauder, seeing as he had 2 title defenses, and well, if I wanted to describe a style, imagine imagine a Marab, but he became a heavyweight and he had good hands, and it'd basically be like that. And oh yeah, the cardio. And his cardio was actually pretty insane. This dude could literally go 5 rounds and not really be noticeably affected. I mean, shit, his nickname was literally Cardio Cain. Now, why am I bringing up his cardio so much? Well, his next title defense will be taking place at Mexico City. Now, Mexico City is 7,350 feet in the air. And, well, the reason why that is important is because Cain trains at AKA, which is, located out in California. Now, as we all know, California is, right next to the sea. And, well, at least the beach side where, Cain's gym is at. And so, basically, that means that the average altitude that Mexico City is, close to 3 times the average altitude of, most areas. And so Cain, let's talk about Fabricio Verdun. Now, Fabricio, he went to Mexico City at least 2 months out, so it's pretty safe to say that even if he didn't train hard to acclimate to the altitude, well, I think it's safe to say his cardio was at least good. Now, Cain, on the other hand, decided to go to Mexico City 10 days out. Now, I think you guys can kind of realize how much of a difference this is, and I could, say it myself, but I'll just let what his coach, Javier Mendez, said, quote, "It was horrible. Horrible. I remember Cain got tired within 30 seconds of hitting pads. I got tired holding the pads. UFC middleweight Luke Rockhold couldn't even make it a full round. I was looking around going, oh no, we're in trouble." And well, they were very much in trouble. So going into the fight, the camp realizes that, like I said, they were in trouble. And with there being limited time, they couldn't do much of anything besides, continuing what they were doing and hoping for the best. And once they made it to the cage, it became apparent, Cain was not going to have a good fight. And his cardio was the first thing that everybody noticed. Hell, I'm pretty sure Joe Rogan actually made a comment about Cain being noticeably gassed. And by the halfway point of the 3rd round, Cain would shoot a bad takedown, and he would get caught in Fabricio's guillotine, and he would lose the title right there. And so this performance would be really well remembered by the birth of a new mythical fighter, C-level Cain. And Cain would go on to fight, I believe, 2 more times in the UFC with One of those being a loss to, unfortunately, Francis Ngannou. And well, yeah, that's about it. I mean, I could talk about what happened after, but honestly, you know, it's not relevant to the story. And well, honestly, I just feel bad for the dude. So let's move on to the next entry. Now for our third entry, this will be Holly Holm deciding to fight Miesha Tate instead of waiting for Ronda return. So Holly won the belt after head kicking Ronda, and you know, after that Ronda decided to, I guess, take a little bit of a sabbatical and, you know, due to mental struggles, and just sit out for a time. And now, why was it bad that Holly decided to, you know, be active and fight Miesha? Well, she could have pulled a McGregor Diaz too, and you know, asked for more. Let's okay here. Let me try and contextualize this. Ronda was big back then. She was big. You know, she was a huge star, and so what Holly could have done is, you know, wait and gotten way more money. You know, she could have asked for more money, and you know, she definitely would have gotten it because, you know, it was a rematch, and well, she was the champ, and she could have, you know, gotten like way more than, you know, what champs would be typically paid, especially because, you know, this would have been, you know, somewhat close to a super fight. But, you know, she decided to fight Miesha, you know, who was someone that, you know, had lost to Ronda twice. And so she lost to Miesha in the 5th round after winning for most of the fight. She would lose by a rear naked choke. And so now, instead of pulling a, you know, and actually this was on the same card as McGregor and Diaz won, surprisingly. And so now she was beltless and lost to someone who Ronda had beaten twice. So for our third and final entry, this will be Dustin Poirier deciding to not fight against Chandler for the vacant title. So Dustin had the opportunity to fight Chandler for the vacant 155 title, you know, after Khabib left and retired, you know. But instead of taking it, he decided to let Charles and Chandler fight for the vacant title. See, you know, with him, you know, I believe either tweeting or saying in an interview, you know, Charles had, you know, paid his dues and, you know, let him have it. And so Dustin, you know, would fight Conor for the 3rd time, and, you know, we saw how that went. And then, you know, and then we would see these two fight, Chandler and Dustin fight later after Chandler got KO'd and Dustin got submitted by Charles. And, you know, I think it's safe to say that Dustin would have beaten Chandler no matter what, even if it was for the title, because, you know, I think you know, Dustin is a better fighter than Chandler. I mean, yeah, Chandler has the better wrestling, but grappling, I mean, I think we know that. I mean, we saw Poirier go against Islam later, you know, old man Poirier, you know, with arthritic hips, and, you know, I mean, he did pretty well against, you know, Islam in the grappling exchanges, you know, the reversals and, you know, the defense. I mean, sheesh, you know. So I think it's safe to say that, you know, Poirier could have won the belt. Now, whether he would have lost to Charles, you know, in his first defense, I mean, I think we can argue that, you know, it's arguable. But, you know, I think it's safe to say that Poirier missed out on this opportunity. If you guys made it this far into the video, then I really do appreciate it, because that Hassan video got 4 subscribers, and I know that's not a lot for most people, but to me it is, and it got over 200 views, and that's pretty cool to me. And also I'd like to say one more thing. I watched some of this section, man, and I said, you know, I don't know how many times, so I'm really sorry for that, but I got some stuff to do, man, and I'm gonna be really honest, I'm way too lazy to edit that out or re-record it, so, you know. And I just said it again. I'll keep it in. And well, if you did make it this far, then I really appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and well, that's all I got to say. Peace.